Hello, everyone. Welcome to a live stream on the History Valley podcast with your host, Jacob Berman. Today, we're going to be discussing upcoming content, and of course, we're going to discuss a few things. Obviously, that is why it's titled Upcoming Content and Discussion. Anyway, so this channel is going places. It's actually getting a lot of views now, finally. And I worked very hard to get every single view. And it's only becoming successful thanks to you, the fans. And I have more guests coming on this channel. A lot more guests. In fact, I'm getting people to come on I never thought I would be able to get on, but they're coming on. And I am very pleased. I'm very happy about this. I'm very excited about the growth of the channel. I am picking up subs, so that's good. And of course, on that note, I would like to remind anyone that isn't subscribed to please subscribe to the channel. My goal is to reach 2,000 subs, hopefully before the end of next month. So, help me out, subscribe, thanks in advance. Okay, that was the discussion part, basically. Let's talk about the upcoming content. Now this I'm probably going to spend about 10 to 20 minutes talking about. If it lasts that long anyway. Okay. I have several scholars coming on the channel. Several more scholars. And a few of them are going to be getting in with me and discussing Ralph Ellis. Ralph Ellis has been someone that's been discussed on this channel several times. And he will be discussed several more times. Right now, we have this problem that we're trying to stop people from confusing the research done by James Valliant and Warren Fahey in their book, Creating Christ, with Ralph Ellis. A lot of people reviewing the book continue to compare it to Ralph Ellis's books. And one thing that I'll emphasize now, and will emphasize again in the future, is that in no way, shape, or form are the research done in Creating Christ to ever be compared with Ralph Ellis. Creating Christ and Ralph Ellis are not similar. Practically not at all. They have practically nothing in common is really the point that I'm trying to make. In no way, in any way, shape, or form, does James Valliant and Warren Fahey ever argue that Jesus Christ has over 24 plus pseudonyms across numerous pieces of early, middle, and late source material. No scholar, no one thinking in their right mind, would believe in that insanity. So I urge anyone that watches my videos that mistakenly believes that James Valliant and Warren Fahey are similar to Ralph Ellis to stop. Stop comparing them to Ralph Ellis, please. I urge you. It's an equivocation fallacy to even suggest that they compare in the slightest way. That being said, I am bringing on several scholars, and eventually I'm going to get them together to talk about Ralph Ellis and why he is wrong. Ralph Ellis has a large fan base, and he needs a lot more criticism. He needs to be criticized a lot more. People need to understand that his research is a travesty. Let's just take a look at some of the people that he equates as the same character. Jesus ben Ananus, King Izates of Adiabene. Jesus ben Ananus was killed during the siege of Jerusalem on AD 70. King Izates died on AD 57. How can the same guy die twice? And even if we didn't know when those individuals died, Jesus ben Ananus was not a king, he was a preacher, an apocalyptic eschatological preacher at Jerusalem. How does that compare to a king of Edessa? Please, miss me with that shit. Furthermore, he goes on this ridiculous identification scheme, like this. Back in Arthurian legend, okay? King Arthur is Jesus. Come on. I mean, is Arnold Schwarzenegger time traveling? Maybe what happened is, maybe somebody went back in time and killed King Arthur in the 5th century. So Jesus looks like King Arthur, so they moved him hundreds of years into the future to take King Arthur's place. That's the kind of lunacy that somebody would have to believe in order to believe what Ralph Ellis believes. But Ralph Ellis will tell you, well, the Knights Templar created Arthurian legend in the 12th century because they found the lost writings of Jesus, some crap like that. Really. So what he's saying is, they rewrote Jesus as King Arthur. They rewrote Jesus as King Arthur to hide they were talking about Jesus. Well, if they were hiding they were talking about Jesus, they did a good job, because let me tell you something. King Arthur, a warlord that conquered Britain and supposedly conquered the Roman Empire too, compares to Jesus? Come on. King Arthur is a badass, bigger than Alexander the Great. That is, if the stories told about him are true, which practically nobody believes, and for understandable and logical reasons. It can't be proven to be true, at least certainly not in the way it says it happened. Come on. So some guy that gets crucified at a failed rebellion during the reign of Pontius Pilate is equal to King Arthur? Come on. Come on, Ralph. That's nonsense. Nonsense. And then he cries like a baby and says, well, Jacob didn't bring me on to defend my thesis. Really? I brought you on 2 times, Ralph. 2 times on this channel. With James Valiant as well, so we could both listen to your claims. And it did not make any sense at all. You came on this channel twice. If that's not defending your thesis, if that's not giving you an opportunity to defend your thesis, I really don't know what is, Ralph. I don't know what is. And then I actually, and I shouldn't have done this, I invited him to come back on my channel to defend his thesis. And then he refused. He refused. He refused. Because the other thing he does is he likes to go after my older videos too, which are like, you try to find a video that I did like 2 years ago, which I don't believe anything that it says today. It's an outdated video. I was wrong about everything I said in it. And what he'll do is he'll use that video and he'll claim, I believe what I used to believe in that video today. That's fallacious. There might be a term for that. I don't remember what it is. There might be a add something term for it. I don't know what it is. But it is fallacious to pretend. It's basically similar to quote mining. When somebody quotes somebody and takes their whole thing out of context. Well, in this video, well, in the way that Ralph was doing it, I guess I could call it research mining. So what he'll do is, he'll go back, he'll find somebody's old research. And he knows damn well that that research is outdated and that person no longer believes anything in that particular published paper and or video or book or whatever. And you'll say, well, that's their position today. And they're going to tear it apart in some Facebook post that he makes. Gregory says red herring, excuse me. Yeah, I think you're right. It's red herring. Yes. Thank you. So yes, Ralph is committing a red herring fallacy. In fact, he makes a lot of those fallacies. Ad hominems too. Tons of them. Never ending. Endless. And then, at the end of the day, he comes up with this big train wreck of a conspiracy theory saying, well, Jacob and all those other scholars are in on it, you know. They're trying to cover up the truth. Of course, that's what a conspiracy theorist lunatic would say when they can't prove something to be true. There's a conspiracy going on. Oh, there's some big conspiracy? They're trying to cover up the truth? Come on. Miss me with that shit again. So anyway. Got several scholars coming on this channel. We're gonna be talking about basically getting into the historical Jesus, possible reconstructions of the historical Jesus. I also want to do more on the Q document. Got material coming on that as well. But yeah, Ralph is somebody that has to be thoroughly addressed because my editing skills have improved recently, and I want to do things that I was not able to do before. I also plan on going back and looking at my older videos and remastering them and re-uploading them. I would like to do that. Armchair Philosopher says, the Jacob and James Valiant versus Ralph videos were some of the best on this channel. Thank you, man. Glad you like it. There's a lot more coming. Gregory says, I don't get the false history argument. If it were so, it would be so detrimental to $1 billion industry. So why would history be forged and made up in the way they say it is? It's because they're paranoid. I mean, that's what lunatics do. That's what lunatics do. They make crap up like that. Yeah. Correct my ass. Ralph is wrong. Gnostic Informant asked, we streaming tomorrow, me, you, and Valiant? Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah, we got to get back on that. It's already been some time. Yeah. I look forward to that. So yeah, I'm doing a couple interviews this coming week. Oh, and I'm not going to say who it is. I want it to be a surprise. I got ourselves one of the old school Ralph Ellis critics coming on this channel. One of the PhDs that criticized Ralph Ellis back 10 years ago, 10 years ago, is coming on this channel. I am super pumped for that interview. It'll come on the channel at some point next week. I am backed up on my editing. So Gnostic, if you think you know, why don't you take a guess? Take a guess. Who do you think it is? Anyway. As a matter of fact, Dr. Richard Carrier actually was one of those old school guys criticizing Ralph 10 years ago. But he's not the one I am talking about. Although I am working on a project with him, I'm in the process of paying him to work on some criticisms on Ralph. Dr. Carrier and Ralph actually engaged in a comment, in several comments on the blog. It's on the article that Dr. Carrier did on Joseph Atwill and his fallacious arguments in what's that book called? Caesar's Messiah. Ralph commented on the article. Dr. Carrier responds. He called Ralph a crank, which in my opinion, crank is an understatement for Ralph. I think he's mentally insane. I genuinely believe Ralph is mentally insane. Not crank. Mentally insane. That's what I believe. He is unfit to do rational and logical research on the historical Jesus. Gnostic Informant, thanks for the $4.99 super chat. Gregory says he's just illogical. There is zero logic. Damn right. There is no logic to this man's arguments. He's a loon. He's a loon. It's as simple as that. There is no way around it. There's no way around it at all. He says, let alone the evidence. That's right. That's exactly right. Recently, I convinced a Ralph Ellis fan that Ralph is wrong. And he contacted me on Facebook Messenger. He apologized to me saying, hey, I'm not going to say who it is, but this guy came on there and he told me, you were right, Jacob. You were right. That means a lot to me when someone comes on there and tells me that. Because that tells me what I'm doing is working. That his fans actually have the capacity to analyze the evidence. I'm just glad that some of his fans at least are using their brains properly. So there is hope yet. There is hope yet. And these videos, I am almost certain they're going to get thousands of views. I don't know if they're going to get a lot of views, but they're going to get a few thousand views. They'll get something. Ralph Ellis fans definitely will see it. And they need to see it. They need to know why this guy is wrong. Bobby O'Keefe says, oh, so Common Sense is coming on the show? Well, Bobby, I'm not sure if that is a criticism. I don't know what you mean by that. So are you suggesting Common Sense did not exist before this live show on this channel? Olivera says, I didn't agree with Carrier in the issue of Pauline analysis and his view of 1 Thessalonians. Well, I don't really agree with Dr. Richard Carrier's view on Paul's epistles necessarily, but there are a lot more things that I agree with him on in a sense than I disagree with him on. Like, I agree with him that Paul wrote before the Gospels. That's what every other scholar says. I agree with him that Paul basically was trying to make money in his ministry. He definitely was trying to do that. There are also other points of agreement. I actually agree with him that so far I find myself agreeing with him that James. I don't think that James is actually the literal brother of Jesus, but I do not agree with him for the moment. I don't think I agree with him that. Actually, not for the moment. I don't find myself agreeing with him that the James passage was interpolated. I think Origen of Alexandria was pretty clear that James is the brother of Jesus, who was called the Christ. It was probably a title. And I do think there was an original Testimonium Flavianum. I do think Josephus does mention a historical Jesus. Although I do agree with Dr. Carrier that most of the gospel story are mythological. And there's a lot more of it that is mythological than not, than historicists are willing to give credit to it for. Bobby O'Keefe says, no, I meant Common Sense as an OG critic of Ellis. Oh, okay, cool. Olivera says, Paul is writing after 70 CE, no doubt in my mind. I agree, although I did a video recently with James Stevens Valiant and Warren Fahey. I'm finally getting Warren Fahey, the co-author of Creating Christ, on this channel. I have yet to edit that video. I plan to get started on editing it today. Although Aaron Raw, I did an interview with Aaron Raw recently. I have to edit that one too. I am so behind on editing. Gonna get that one on too. I do think, Oliver, there's one thing I'll say for now. I do think some pieces of Pauline material dates the AD 50s. Like a little bit of Philippians, a little bit of 2 Corinthians, and a little bit of Romans, I think, were written in the 50s. Although I do think the majority of the Pauline letters were written in the 90s. So yeah. Because I found evidence that suggests, I'm not going to call it proven, but there is some evidence that suggests that pre-Pauline material was compressed by a later redactor with the Pauline corpus that we have now. So, that will be explained in the Warren Fahey I didn't say his name right. Warren Fahey, James Valiant interview. That'll be coming out soon. Armchair says, I find it hilarious that Ralph Ellis sports the Indiana Jones looking costume with the vest, hat, and cactus. That's a good one, Armchair. I like that. That's probably what he did. That's probably done on purpose. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. Gregory says, did you ever resolve Clement saying Paul only wrote one letter? Oh, I remember I had that conversation with you on Discord. Yeah. That's kind of debatable. Like, what did he mean by the letter? Because at the same time, it's possible that Paul's original letters weren't titled yet. Just like the Gospels weren't titled Mark, Matthew, and Luke, and John. It could be that. I don't know. I don't really know what Clement means. That he says Paul who wrote the epistle. I do admit it sounds singular. Although I do agree with the consensus, he wrote 7 letters at least. Perhaps more. There is a scholarly case being made that Paul wrote a bit of the pseudepigraphy, but the pseudepigraphy are collections of forgeries and mixtures of authentic material, pretty much clustered into these 7 pseudepigraphical epistles of Paul. By the way, I want everyone to understand the Book of Hebrews is not a Pauline letter. The 7th pseudepigraphical letter is the Epistle to the Laodiceans. That's in Marcion's canon. It's not in the New Testament. The reason why that is the case is because the Epistle to the Hebrews doesn't even claim to be written by Paul. Gregory says, so could it be referring to the epistle as a doctrine? That's an interesting question. Not sure if I ever thought about that before. That might be reading too much into it, though. Clement doesn't seem to think it as a doctrine, though. It's an interesting idea to ponder, though. I have to think about that. Till I get more questions, I'm going to go back to Ralph real quick. The one thing that his fans have got to understand, and this is proven, this is not up for debate. Ralph Ellis is wrong about the kings of Adiabene. The kings of Adiabene were not, I repeat, not, capital N, capital O, capital T. They were not the leaders of the Jewish revolt. Even Josephus himself says that Emperor Vespasian gave his security, not just his security, his personal security to King Monobazes II, the family of King Azates, after the destruction of the temple on 8070. And I've already went for the evidence. Academic Brian Allen, mainstream scholar, he even came on the channel. Not only did he concede, well, let me rephrase that. He never agreed with any of that nonsense to begin with. He completely agrees with me that the kings of Adiabene were pro-Roman. There's just no other way to look at it. They were Roman. They were pro-Roman clients. They were a Roman client kingdom. It's as simple as that. As simple as that, guys. There's no way around it. As simple as that. Let's see here. See if there's any questions I missed. Oh, let me fix my mic. There we go. That's better. See here. See if I missed anything. Doesn't seem like I missed anything. Okay, so let's go back to Ralph Ellis. Let's continue on Ralph Ellis until I get more questions. Anyone that super chats, I will prioritize answering questions of those that super chat. So don't forget to do that. Okay, Gregory says, I think it's a good example of a distinction between two people he claims is Jesus. Oh yeah. I mean, I remember I think it was on the second interview I did with Ralph and Valiant. That together, that is. James Valiant at one point asked Ellis, Ralph, do you think every Jesus and Josephus are the same character? And Ralph, without budging an eye, says yes. Proudly. He says yes. He thinks every single person in Josephus is actually Jesus himself. Every single Jesus and Josephus are the same character. It's really just ridiculous. Gnostic Informant asks, when do you think the first Christian epistle from Paul was written? Okay, so you're asking, when did Paul actually write? We're not talking about the Proto-Pauline letters in the 50s. Okay. That's a tough one. I think Philemon, his last letter, I know that's not your question, but I have to think about this one to answer your question. Philemon was probably written in January 96 CE, just shortly before his execution. Not execution, before he died of old age. Paul was never executed. That's a later Christian nonsense made up, backdating his death by 30 years. And that was really because they confused Ananias with Paul. That's a long story. Anyway, I think his first letter was probably, it might be 1 Thessalonians. As a matter of fact, the consensus, I think, even says 1 Thessalonians is the first letter. For different reasons, I think I agree with them. I'm not 100% sold on this yet, because I have to look into this more. I never really sat down to conclude on which letter was the first one that Paul wrote. But if I had to give an answer, I would throw 1 Thessalonians out there right now as the current answer I'm going with, because that's when he starts becoming concerned about a wrath of God coming upon the Gentiles, which practically every other letter of Paul is concerned with. It has the same problems. There's divisions in the church. Apollos, Cephas, John, and James. Same old crap, every letter. And he's concerned there's divisions in the church, there's a persecution that's going on. This could have only have happened after AD 70, because those persecutions happened in the 90s. The wrath of God upon the Gentiles was just being carried out by Emperor Domitian. And there's a Christian tradition that Emperor Nerva released Christians in 96 AD, which he's 96 CE, which he most certainly would have done, because we know Domitian did persecute the Christians, so it obviously would have stopped when Nerva came into power. And through that logical deduction, it serves as independent evidence that, okay, yeah, the Christian tradition would obviously be correct on this. Now, when it comes to Nero persecuting the Christians, we know that's wrong. We look at the Florence manuscript of Tacitus. Oh, before I continue on that, Gnostic Informant, I would put the first letter in 95 AD. Somewhere in 95. 1 Thessalonians probably somewhere in 95 AD. Anyway. Back to Tacitus. Tacitus, in the Florence manuscript of Tacitus, it says Christiana, so Christiana. So it's the Christians. The Christians were confused with Christians. That's the reason why there's a Christian tradition that exists that Nero persecuted the Christians. They were confusing a similar group, referred to by a similar name, but not quite the same group. That's what was going on. That's what was going on. Any more questions from anybody? While I wait, I'm going to take a look around at something real quick. Let's see here. No questions so far. Okay, guys, I think I'm going to go ahead and head off. I thank all of you for joining me. Thanks for the super chat again. Gnostic Informant means a lot. Okay, here, hold on a second. Gregory's asking the last question of the show, if I'm going to declare it, the last question. When was Christ first used textually? I think it might have been Second Maccabees. Or one of the or Septuagint. Septuagint is first, but it is also used again. The second time it's used, I think it's in one of the Maccabean books. I'm not positive. But yeah, the Septuagint is first. The Septuagint's first. Alright, I'll see all you later. Thanks for joining me.